Hey everyone, we are here at Winter Fringe, and then if you can't see the video, I'm wearing a sweater because it's always cold in here.
Shakespeare's behind you.
Yeah, it's Shakespeare, yes, Orlando Shakes. This is like the mini version of Fringe, and so we're here with my usual partner in crime, co-host, and God knows troublemaker, and saving my ass with the technical stuff, my hubby, John.
Thank you for the credit.
Yes, well I know, it's full credit for that, and we're interviewing Miss Eleanor O'Brien.
Yes.
And she has a interesting show altogether, and she's the one who reached out and contacted us. And it's like, oh my God, our second Fringe show interview. I love this. Yay!
I Googled sex positive Orlando, and that is how I found you. And I was like, oh, thank goodness.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
It's not a total desert.
No, we're trying. We continually fight. That's why our motto is advocates for sexual freedom there. So that way, whatever that may be.
Bless you.
It could be missionary style or God knows something out of your
flavors,
shows. Yes,
right?
Talk about your show.
Well, this show came out of a...
I hear a good story brewing.
I'm just giving them a moment. So this story came out of a piece that I did as part of a show that I directed called Sex We Can.
Okay.
And that show was about envisioning what does the sexual future look like that you want to live into. And I created a piece that was called The Cult of Cunnilingus.
Ooh.
And
I want to join.
Right? I know. And I loved doing this piece so much. It was like a little 15-minute piece. And so I decided I would craft a show around it. And so that was where How to Really, Really, Really Love a Woman came from. And I've been touring it. I premiered it last year in Hawaii, and then I've been touring it along the West Coast. So this is my first time being on the East Coast.
Welcome.
Thank you. And really this story came out of my own discomfort and my own struggles with receiving. And like many women, I think I was, struggling with my own shame and, taste, smell, all that stuff. And so I often write shows as a kind of a healing process for myself. So this show is actually set 10 years in the future, and it's during a time when we have evolved as a species to a time when culturally we've shifted to goddess worship, and that women's pleasure and female pleasure has fueled the revolution, and we are a more compassionate, connected society because of cunnilingus.
Yes, the revolution.
Yes.
That should be a t-shirt.
The revolution.
It does. It should be. So
Right?
just letting you know, it's like I'll be first online for that one because I
Awesome.
think it's perfect there.
Thank you.
So
Yeah. So it's been super fun. It's an edgy show because it's there's graphic descriptions of there's both receiving and also me on my first time going down on a woman and feeling like having a lot of sympathy for the men because
it's a lot of work.
Well, and it's also every pussy is different,
Yes.
and it can be so mysterious and and so a lot of the show is about learning how to put words to what do you like, what do you want, and for a long time that was really challenging for me, and men did ask, and I would be like,
Oh, just keep going this way,
Right,
and then that
which
way.
would be
Then,
fine,
yeah, it's like there wasn't really a roadmap to say, "Hey, this is where you hit it."
Yes. And so my journey has been growing in getting more comfortable with finding the words and also knowing that every time is different and that it's not always, I don't always love the same thing that I loved last time, but part of my responsibility is communicating and helping to educate and not just expecting somebody to know what to do.
Well, one of the best pieces of advice I actually got on doing that was just like a blowjob, don't do the same thing every time. Variety is good.
Yes.
And it's true. It changes. Sometimes what you like yesterday is not what you're going to like tomorrow night.
Right.
But it is true. I understand the flight of getting the feedback because by society we're so conditioned not to be, silent or to fake it. And believe it, I'm one of those guys who hate when you fake it.
Yeah.
I want you to drop unconscious when I'm done. That's how I feel. I'm good.
You want that toe curling
Right?
orgasm.
But I think what happens, particularly for men, is that, and I encounter this a lot because people think my show is going to be like a how-to, like a technical how-to. And what I try to explain is like there is no one size fits all. And you know, I have encountered so many men in my life who like feel like they've learned a technique and they're going to do it on you, you know, and you're like, okay, no, you know, like that. My pussy's super sensitive, and you know, you got to kind of sneak up on it. And but I think that you know, sort of, I don't know if it's sports or what, but I think a lot of guys are like, once I learn the moves, you know.
It applies to all.
It applies to all, right?
I'm like, it's like, that's not what they teach you in football. You know, in football, they teach you how to work together as a team, how to communicate, even, you know, nonverbal. You got to do the same thing here. It's not that hard, but.
Well, you know, that should make sense, though, because in football, if you do the same play, you're screwed.
Yes,
because then
that's
they're going to
true.
know your play. You got to mix it up.
Right? You got to sneak up on it.
Yeah, completely different there. But actually, you know, we're fortunate here in Orlando. We do teach classes with our sponsor, Fairvilla, and actually on Sunday, our other co-presenter, Debbie, is going to be teaching Secrets of the Oral Arts. So if they want to learn about that, they could go over there.
Oh,
but
yes.
yeah, I've been trying to get her to come to the class, to come to your show.
Oh,
so,
good,
yes,
good.
yes,
Yeah, I just went to Fairvilla yesterday.
Yeah.
It's like a mega store. It's so beautiful. That was great.
Oh yeah, they have 5 locations.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And we teach at all 5 locations. So.
Oh, excellent.
But the more we can talk about oral sex, the better.
Exactly. We even have a level 2 oral sex class.
I want to go.
Yeah.
See, I feel like there's always more to learn. You know?
Oh,
Always.
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
You never know. It's like even with our own workshops, it might be the same topic, but we always spice it up or we just change notes. I mean, how many times have we forgotten some things? We're like, oh, well, we just improvise.
Or how many times does science change? Or the opinion change? Or something changes?
Yeah. Learning about the science for me has been super useful. I don't know if you've read Naomi Wolf's book, Vagina, a Biography. Do you know that book?
No, we haven't heard.
It's wonderful.
Okay.
And one of the reasons I made this show was because I read that book and I realized there was so much that I feel like I hadn't learned. And that was like, one thing is about the wiring, like how the nerves that branch out from your spinal cord, you know, they go to your clit and your sacred spot and your cervix and your perineum, and that women all have different matrices. Like the wiring is different in every pussy. And it was like a light went off for me, like, oh, that's why I don't orgasm from that like somebody else does, you know? Because our wiring is differently. Like you have different bundles of nerves in different places, you
Absolutely.
know? And that was such a relief to me because I had felt like, oh, you know, like, you know, because I'm not multi-orgasmic, and you know, my best friend is, and she was like, oh, you know, this technique is like what really does it for me, and I'm like, yeah, that doesn't do it for me, and I spent years sort of being like, I guess I'm just broken or whatever, and then realizing like, oh no, I just have different wiring. Yeah.
There was an interesting article put out last year.
Yeah.
You know, there's lots of articles that show different penises, and they name them. The curve, the banana, the whatever, all these different sizes. I actually found an article that was the opposite. They took molds inside the vulva and showed the different shapes. And there's like 18 different common shapes among women. They did like 1,000 women and did this.
Wow.
And then started doing a matchup game between which penises fit the best vaginas for the best pleasure.
Interesting.
And it was amazing because it was like, you know, the American plug doesn't fit in the European plug, but this worked great together. And I was like, as an engineer, I'm like, this is fantastic stuff.
That
but
is
it's not
so
like
interesting.
Unfortunately, they're not going to start putting it on your driver's license, so it's still just a guessing game.
You have to do. But you know what's funny about that? It kind of makes you realize, like, I mean, I've had sex with some people that I'm like, I can't. The parts don't quite fit the way you would hope. You know, like something about that person is like, and I thought like, well, maybe it's pheromones, or maybe, you know, like, or maybe they just don't have a big enough fat pad for me to like rub against. I don't know.
Not enough bush right there for the cushion.
Right, not enough cushion for the cushion. Yeah. But maybe it's the shape.
It could be.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I was a doctor, that is the field I would be in.
I'm surprised you didn't take that knowledge and turn it into a game we could use.
Right?
Oh, great. No,
You know, someone in Japan is going to hear this and make that game.
Have you ever seen, I want to say it's like, I came across this years ago in a book, and it was like I feel like the roots were Native American, but it was like different pussy shapes were like associated with different animals. There was like the deer pussy and the bat pussy and the like.
That would sound familiar, but I haven't seen it.
But that sounds Native American.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, I'm a bat. I did this thing this last year. This woman in Portland, where I'm from, she took photographs of women's vulvas, and then there was a big like a reveal, like all of them were on the wall, and at one time, and nobody had you didn't have your name attached to it, right? You just, so we go in, and you had to find yours, and it was fascinating because it was sort of like, okay, I know it's not that one, I know it's not that one, but it took a while to kind of narrow it down. And the funny thing is that when she took your photo, you showed up, you literally like dropped trow, spread your legs, and she took a picture. And I remember being like, oh, let me adjust, make the butterfly shape, whatever. And she was like, no, I just want it au naturel, the way it first appears.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So then, somebody asked her a question at this thing, did she do any photoshopping? And she said, no, no photoshopping. The only thing she photoshopped was if there were bits of toilet paper. She photoshopped those out, right? It happens. So we're looking, and I finally find mine. And I remembered in my mind that I had been wearing sweats that day with no underpants. And sure enough, right there at the base of my vulva was a little lint ball. I was like, okay, you could have photoshopped that.
Maybe it was just artistic expression.
I'm telling you. I was like, I'm so glad my name is not on this. Yeah.
There was an artist we saw last year, and I think it was at Nude Night.
Yes.
That did, think of 5x5 squares, so 25 squares, and each one was a plaster mold of a vagina. And it showed all the different, vulva. But it showed all the different ones, and in looking at it, you could really see that some women have just the plain slit, and some women have these giant butterfly wings and everything in between, short, long, hairy, because it actually took the mold of the hair as well, so you can tell. And it was just 25 of them all together. And I saw so many people just sitting there staring.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, right. And that's part of my show is I talk about, like, I had no idea it was normal because I'd only seen pussies in porn. I'd never seen a close-up woman's pussy,
Yes.
And in porn, they're so tidy. They're, like, so compact, and hairless, and so I
lasered and perfect,
and perfect, and so I have long bat wings, and I thought I needed labiaplasty, like and thank God I realized that
it's beautiful
they're
and
all
perfect.
different.
It's
and they're
beautiful
all
the
perfect.
way it is.
Yeah, but that was part of my growth. Was like, oh.
Well, I had a similar. That, it's not like a bunch of us sit around looking at each other's penises.
Right.
So for the most part, I did go to an all-boys school, but the gym room was all weird and stuff. You don't actually, you don't stare.
Yeah, of course. Right.
So you grow up and you're not sure exactly what size your penis falls in.
Right.
So of course you rely on your lovers, as women probably do, going, is this normal?
Right.
And you only have their experiences to go on.
Yeah.
So if they normally dated very 6'5" basketball players, you feel kind of small. If they dated out of the chess club, you may feel kind of big compared, comparisons. Right. But it's all just a relative comparison.
Yeah. And the funny thing I have found is that penis size does not seem to correlate to the rest of the man. Like
exactly.
Nope.
Yeah. I've met very tall, big men that are on the smaller size, and vice versa. And I kind of love that. You're like,
it's a surprise.
What's going to come out of the box?
Yes. So tell us, what goes on in Portland? Like, what do you do? What excitement?
Well, so I've been running Dance Naked Productions, which is the name of my theater company, since 2005. And what I normally do, I have two other solo shows. One I brought here to Orlando in 2012. That's about my training to be a dominatrix. that is a comedic tale because I was actually terrible at it. And I learned quickly that my desire to sort of nurture and hug and hold and rock, was like, oh, that's at odds with what the customer is actually coming for.
Just a little bit.
Right.
Sometimes it's hard to be mean.
It was for me. And then my second show was called Lust and Marriage, and that was about my open marriage. And I toured that actually all over Canada, but I never brought it here to Orlando. But normally I do group shows, and I help people develop pieces around a theme, and then we do a big group show like Sex We Can, which is why I haven't toured as much to Orlando. But so I teach classes in sex and creativity and help people to share their stories. I do a monthly event called Stand Up Smut that's an open mic, and I call it an erotic open mic, where people can share stories or poetry or songs or whatever that's around the topic of sex. It's super sweet. I love it. We have a storytelling show called The Mystery Box that's every couple of months they do a show.
Oh, okay. So you actually host the Mystery Box.
No, I've been on it. It's hosted by a couple named Reba and Eric, and they're lovely. And there's another one called Body Storytelling that's out of San Francisco, and she's a friend of mine too, Dixie DeLatour.
Yes, we know Dixie.
Yeah?
Yes.
She's wonderful.
She's awesome.
And I've brought her show to Portland before. The West Coast, man, it's like also incestuous and intertwined, but we do Stand Up Smut once a month so people can try out things and share stuff, and then there's a really active kink scene. There's sex positive. There's a new group called Empowered Pleasure. There's just it's just popping up all the time. It's just a very sex positive culture. It's funny, when I first premiered my show Dominatrix for Dummies, I premiered it in Toronto, and the response was like,
really?
People were horrified.
Oh my gosh.
And then I toured that summer, and I went from east to west. And as I went west, the response got better and better until finally I got to Vancouver, BC, and people were like, "Wah!" And it was interesting. I was like, oh. It matters. Place matters,
Yeah, it sounds like
so I'm so grateful that you're here developing a culture.
Yes. We're working hard there. But yeah, it's the same feedback here in the United States. East to west, this is going to be the same reaction, that they will be like, and then as you slowly go that way, then it's like, oh, okay, yay.
Yeah.
Which is funny because when we talk to our friends on the West Coast, we put on similar shows. They'd be like, yeah, it went okay. We had maybe 20 people show up. And they're like, yeah, we had 200. I'm like,
yeah.
If it wasn't that I like the sunshine so much, Portland sounds so nice.
Yeah, I know. It's like practically snowing right now, so I'm very happy to be here. I know. I know. I was like, you want me to come to Florida in January? You betcha.
Yes. It's like,
yeah,
because when we hear like 20 degrees and snow, we're like, nope.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. You have to, but it's good for cuddling. And there's a big cuddling scene in Portland, which is sweet.
Yes.
I have so many friends who are professional cuddlers now, because people need the touch.
In the last couple months was the first cuddle party we've ever heard of in Orlando.
Really?
Really?
Oh, I'm so glad.
So it's coming. It's
coming.
just...
They took the majority, I don't know how the cuddle parties are on the West Coast, but they did take the majority, 75% of it was conversation, all negotiation, consent, and maybe 25% was cuddling, and even that, not everyone was cuddling. It was just a few people. So again, I don't know. I couldn't compare it to a West Coast cuddly party, which I kind of figured that they just go through 25%, okay, here's the rules and things like that, and then you spend the rest of the time cuddling. So different mentality, different environment altogether.
I do think you kind of have to build a community of people who are comfortable and understand consent. And the other thing, I think that the secret to cuddle parties for me is that somebody has to facilitate, and you have to keep changing it up, because what sometimes happens is you get stuck, okay, I'm in this cuddle puddle, but I don't want to stay here. I want to cuddle with those people now. So having somebody else say okay, now we're going to move along, is really helpful.
Oh, definitely. Speed dating. Next.
Speed dating, right? Exactly. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So like a cuddle master of ceremonies.
Yes. Yeah.
It's
I can do that.
Yeah. And different ways to cuddle, I think, is helpful. You know, because
True.
some people are like, "Do you just spoon the whole time?" And you know, like, no, actually, there's sort of different styles of cuddling. There's different ways you can do it. You know, like I was at a party the other night. And we did tops. Heads and tails. So there was like hair stroking, like head massage and foot massage, and you could choose which one you wanted. And I thought that was helpful for beginners because it's like, you know, it can be scary to be like, okay, do I put my body against this body of a stranger that I don't know? You know, whereas somehow like having somebody rub your feet or rub your head is like, I don't know, an entryway.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, we just never thought about presenting it that way. Various different styles of cuddling.
I'm proposing a trip.
Yes.
Come
We
visit
could
us.
learn a lot out there.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, and you know what else is great? A great resource is Betty Martin. Do you know Betty Martin's work, The Wheel of Consent?
Yes.
Yes. Oh yeah, we do.
Yes.
Yeah, and her 3-minute game, that's a great way in too, you know, of just like you're just touching somebody's hand and arm, you know, like that's an easing in. So
It sounds so weird we have to teach people to touch again because
Yes.
it is such a hands-free society.
I know.
Don't touch, don't, you know.
Yep. Yeah, and we're starving for it. We need
Oh, yeah.
it so
Oh
much.
yeah, completely there. And then just remembering to ask for consent too, and then having that weird look of like, why are you asking me? Because we discovered, because we're involved in all the different communities between the BDSM power exchange communities and the ethical non-monogamy community. And sometimes we see in the BDSM community more consent oriented versus the ethical non-monogamy, because we went on a swingers cruise and we saw how many people were just touching without asking consent, and I was just like, I was mortified, and they're like, no, this is fine, this is normal, it's okay, and I'm like, okay.
Don't get me wrong, it wasn't everyone,
It wasn't everyone.
but this poor girl came in
the fetish night.
and she had, it was a clothing optional cruise. So she wore basically a few pieces of electrical tape and a butt plug. It would seem common sense not to walk up to a stranger and tug on the butt plug. But 5 people that in one night did, and I'm like, why?
It's like, do you not realize how it's being held?
Right.
That's not a thrill. That's a, oh crap.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah. It's funny because that's why I actually stopped going to swingers parties, because I felt like it wasn't, you know, there wasn't the laying out of how to ask for consent and how to give consent, and it was sort of more of a free for all.
Yep.
And one of the things I love about Sex Positive Portland is that in order to go to any parties or events, you have to have gone through an awesome boundaries class and a STARS talk, which is and the STARS talk was invented by Evelyn Dacker, who runs SPP. She's the CEO or whatever, the head of it. And she developed it for her daughter who was going off to college. And STARS stands for STI status, turn-ons, avoids, relationship expectations, and safer sex practices. And it's great because it's like, you know, your pre-sex talk.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do it in that order, but like touching on all of those things.
Right.
And now it's become kind of de rigueur in the SPP world. Is like, you know, you'll meet somebody and be like, okay, STARS talk, you know, and it's just so helpful. Because like even things like relationship expectations, just the idea of like, what does sex mean to you? Because some people it's like, you know, one and done, this is fun, you know, and some people are like, are you gonna
Do I
call
call
me?
you in the morning? We're going out for breakfast.
Right? Yeah.
But
So
is this an ongoing thing?
right?
Yeah, so that's one of our classes, but we call it swinger etiquette. But now I want to look into more for that STARS, and
Yeah, she did a
bring
TED
that-
talk on it. You can
Okay.
you can Google it.
we have to Google it.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
That'd be great because we're always looking to bring stuff again from the West Coast or wherever else over. And we're actually starting to work with a company out of Spain.
Oh,
Because
really?
apparently we're trying to work with the Spanish-speaking market, because for all we have out there in English, there's about 5% that's in Spanish.
Of course, right.
And
yeah,
there's
that
an
makes sense.
entire continent south of us,
Yeah.
2 of them, that you know are
yeah.
looking, and they're in the same place we were 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So we're trying to bring it again to their community. Of course, we have a huge Latin population in the United States.
Sure, sure.
So to kind of be
That
friendly
is
with it.
great. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, especially
for
here in
doing that.
Central Florida with the whole Puerto Rican migration coming over.
Right?
So yeah.
Oh, those poor people have
We-
not.
yeah.
Yeah.
Earthquake. I can't remember the word.
They have 2 earthquakes. They had the hurricane, so it's
Yeah.
been a lot of people affected. So they've been coming here. So it's been a huge shift in demographics and Spanish speaking, and we're
Yeah.
just like, hey, we got to educate you guys on this.
Thank you. That
Yes.
is really so important. And I hadn't even thought about that, you know, but of course, who's doing that? Because I know we're not doing that in Portland. And we don't have as big of a Spanish-speaking population, but, you know, I'm going to bring that back to SPP as like, you know, having classes in other languages.
Well, even people who've learned English as a second language, when you talk with them about a subject about sex, again, different words mean different things. You know, when we start saying clitoris, I guarantee you, in no learn English in a month course, they know what that means, and of course they'll pick it up as they go. But they're much more comfortable receiving it in a language they know, and of course the jokes flow over a lot better if you speak it in the right language.
Right? Exactly. So that was like the difficult part for me, was trying to learn the proper medical terms in Spanish. That just hurt my brain, because I'm like, that's not what I know it as, but this is the proper stuff, because I still want to be, you know, fun and educational, but at the same time, you know, give them the right information, not to say what do we call it, the slang words. Right.
Right.
Because those switch between Spanish, which has been a lot of fun.
Because I'm Mexican, so Mexican Spanish is completely different than Puerto Rican, Cuban, and Dominican Republic, and I got into a huge, like, I was about to kill my coworkers because I said a word in Mexican Spanish that meant beat the crap out of somebody, and in Puerto Rican meant to really bleep the shit out of someone, like give them a good fucking, and I was like, oh, you guys didn't even correct me? We thought you knew. I'm like, no, we did not know. Wow. That is not what I thought I was saying. Yeah. Beating up versus great sex? No, totally different.
Yeah. God, I hadn't even thought about that.
Oh, yeah. That was my crash course. Yeah, because here we have all the various different, like I said, from Cuban, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rican, I think Salvadoran too, Spanish, Argentinian,
South America.
Venezuela, and then Mexico. Those are like the 7 that I know that has changed. I'm like, So, yeah. So,
thank you for the work you're doing.
Yeah.
Much appreciated.
Yeah. So how can our audience members find you and more information?
Well, I'll be here this weekend. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday I'm doing shows. And then Monday I'm going to the Magic Kingdom.
Oh, cool.
Oh, yay!
I'm so excited. And I'm my Instagram is Dance Naked Productions. Same thing with Facebook. I have a Patreon. If you want to see the show, you can join my Patreon. It's Patreon at Dance Naked, and the show is on there. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Dance Naked, easy to remember.
Dance Naked. I started calling my company Dance Naked because I wanted to make shows about sexuality that were joyful, and I felt like there was a fair amount about trauma, out there.
Yeah.
But I was like, I want to make theater that makes people, feel celebratory about their sexuality. So.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. Yeah, because there is like oftentimes a lot of trauma-filled shows, but we need some entertainment and lively and really enjoy the pleasures of sex.
Exactly, my friend. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Sex is a wonderful thing, and we should all enjoy it.
Not just for procreation.
Exactly. Yeah. And I talk about this in my show that, we're all living in this time of fear and anxiety, and we're on this sort of constant cortisol adrenaline drip. But that what sex does is it triggers your pituitary gland to produce dopamine and oxytocin, and that's what we need more of. So
all that without the drugs. It's fantastic.
Yes. So awesome. Yes. So we look forward to the show. We'll be going there in about the next 5-10 minutes there.
Wonderful.
And we'll hopefully try to post all this really fast, or
we'll make it a quick turnaround.
Yes. So that way people could go see it. But thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate it, Johnny.
Thanks.
All right.